Complete history of China.
Nuwa and Fuxi, usually depicted as half-human, half-dragon spirit creatures, created humans out of clay as companions. The humans settled in the Yellow River and were ruled by the 5 good emperors, mythological figures who were peaceful and benevolent. But tragedy struck when the river flooded, devastating the land. Yu the engineer spent 13 long years building canals and locks to control the waters, earning his place as the land's king. He founded the Xia dynasty, China's first ruling family, and a structure of government that would remain unchanged for millennia.
Wait, are we going to gloss over that? How the fuck did this start? We had 2 dragon humans, they made clay people, and then we had the 5 Hokage? Shout out the 5 good emperors. Okay, cool.
Earning his place as the land's king, he founded the Xia dynasty, China's first ruling family, and a structure of government that would remain unchanged for millennia. In the words of John Green,
an open letter to the Xia
love John
dynasty.
Green.
An open letter to the Xia dynasty. Dear Xia dynasty, why you gotta be so fictional?
Yeah, the Xia dynasty is largely considered mythological at this point, but may be intertwined with some real events, considering how much the later Chinese scholars wrote about them. Speaking of writing, the Chinese were really good at it. They developed their own famous pictograph-based system concurrently without any outside influences.
Dude, it feels like the Chinese invented a lot of shit. I feel like they invented, like, most shit. It occurs the day they invented gunpowder.
But they looked a lot more like this than this. In any case, humans settled in the Yellow River Valley, forming numerous cultures which is collectively called the Yellow River Civilization. The myth of Yu the engineer likely began with this early civilization's attempts to control the flooding of the river. These settlers are what we now call the Han, although they didn't refer to themselves as that for at least a few centuries. They were surrounded by
4,000 BC is so old. That is crazy old. Because we're working on we're not even at 400 years. And they're at 6,000? America, the US of A. Chat, America, the US of A. America, it was formed in 1776. The Nile was settled at 6,000 BC. So this is early as shit. All right.
numerous other peoples to their south, north, and west. The first Chinese state to be supported by historical evidence is the Shang. The story goes that the Shang were one of the
We just glazed over 2,400 years. Really? We're fast forwarding 2,400 years like that? Nothing happened. That 2,400 years ago is before Jesus. You're saying before Jesus to now, but before, nothing happened. Nothing? Do you know how much crazy shit has happened in the last 2,400 years? Do you know how much insane shit has happened? You had The Hangover. The Hangover Part 2. The Hangover 3. That's not even fucking touching on Zach Galifianakis' other films. 2,400, we made a fuck ton of stuff happen. Gronk's uploaded a new video.
States of the Xia dynasty and rose up to overthrow the last Xia emperor under their leader King Tang. Tang defeated the forces of the Xia during a storm at the Battle of Mingtao. The storm was seen as a sign that the spirits were blessing his overthrow of the dynasty. In 1046 BC, the Xia...
I feel like they just made that shit up after winning the battle, you know what I'm saying? Because if it was sunny and they won the battle, they would say like, oh, that was the emperor smiling upon us with the sun. Like, if you win the battle, you can make up whatever you want. If it was windy, you say that's the gods speaking.
本来就是啊，有一些历史本来就是胜利者自己反正编造的。
Because they're talking about how good of a job we've done.
Shang were overthrown by the Zhao, which is China's longest-lasting dynasty. It is speculated that the name for China in the Mandarin language comes from this period.
Zhangguo.
The Zhao ruled the kingdom under a quasi-feudal system, meaning that power was given to regional warlords, all of whom pledged fealty to the king. This means that the king's power depends on keeping the lords happy, which King Yu did not.
We don't plead fealty anymore. I feel like we should bring pleading fealty back. It kind of fell off. I would like to see more people in chat plead fealty. Thank you, Jaco. I appreciate that. Plead this day. Guards! Behead this man! Behead this man! I guess we do plead fealty, and it's when you're a billionaire and you're at a table with Donald Trump and you glaze the shit out of him. First off, I gotta say, the new edition of the White House looks phenomenal. Also, you don't look crazy thick in that suit. Anyway, that's the new pleading fealty.
He exiled his wife, whom he had married for political reasons, and the state she came from rose up in revolt. They deposed the king and installed his son Ping to the throne, but merely as a figurehead with no real authority, as regional warlords,
I missed all that. I didn't listen to a word you said.
all of whom pledged fealty to the king. This means that the king's power depends on keeping the lords happy,
Okay.
which King Yu did not. He exiled his wife, whom he had married for political reasons, and the state she came from rose up in revolt. They deposed the king
He exiled his wife. You can't just exile your wife, right?
and installed his son Ping to the throne, but merely as a figurehead with no real authority, as regional warlords began crowning themselves kings over their own states.
Puppet warlord, while everyone's actually saying the states should be more powerful.
这个也不能叫傀儡吧，这应该叫做反正春秋战国的那种，尤其是春秋的话是比较有礼仪的。那战国之后的话，就是反正就礼仪分崩了嘛。
Chroniclers refer to this time as the period of spring and autumn. It doesn't translate well into English. Soon, a rivalry would emerge among these states for control of all China, beginning the Warring States period, and a collapse of any centralized control. Warring became so fierce, in fact, that the local kings began building compacted earth fortifications on their mutual borders to deter invasions from rival states. Fighting ended in 221 BC when the Qin finally defeated the rest and unified China once more.
The Qin dynasty.
The Qin dynasty didn't last very long, but they did have absolute authority. Agriculture and herding were regulated and everyone paid their taxes, but they did have a weird fear of books for some reason.
Yeah, I can never trust a power.
看来这里面这些的话，可能对这些有一些历史的话，他没有讲清楚。
That's really into burning books. But I do like how fervent they were on taxes. When do they build a wall and make Mexico pay for it? I don't think they had Mexico back then. At least I don't think in China they did. I don't think they knew about it. Mayans? Yeah, I don't think I knew about the Mayans in 213 BC in China. I'm willing to die on this hill. They were Aztecs. Still didn't know about them.
The teachings of Confucius became very popular, and his brand of philosophy began having huge impacts on Chinese society. In response to the growing power of the Xiongnu, the ancestors of the Mongols, Emperor Qin Shi Huang began joining parts of the warring states' walls at strategic weak points in the border. This would be the first foundations of China's Great Wall. The walls continued to be expanded upon using hundreds and thousands of slave laborers and soldiers over successive centuries to protect the empire from various other nomadic raiders.
Contrary to popular belief, the Huns never attacked China? Westerners mistakenly confused the Xiongnu with the Huns, who had also originated from Central Asia. Wait, what? Really? I thought that was the whole thing. I thought the Huns took over all of China. They put it in the documentary I saw. Mulan. I didn't know that. Idiot white person. Behind every idiot white person is propaganda they have been fed. And we shouldn't blame the idiot white person. We should blame whoever was feeding the propaganda, in which case this was Walt fucking Disney.
Successive centuries to protect the empire from various other nomadic raiders. Qin Shi Huang became deranged and senile in his old age and became obsessed with finding a cure for death to allow him to attain immortality. He traveled far and wide and spent a small fortune on alchemy, medicines, and potions, one of which killed him. The succession of the emperor caused a crisis when the nobles attempted to crown his son and control him as a puppet.
They love puppet emperors. They love that shit. Blah, 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 mercury poisoning. Yeah. But I get it. Like, if you're 210 BC and you see a metal that's in liquid form and a guy with the craziest beard you've ever seen says this will make you live forever, I'm drinking that shit for sure. Like, mercury looks like it should give you superpowers. I totally get that. It kills you frame one. I know that now. That shit is not good for you. Instant poisoning. But in 210 BC, you see mercury, you're like, what is this? That shit looks amazing.
Causing the country to erupt into a civil war between rival states. The Han state was victorious, which began the rule of the Han dynasty, famous for inventing paper, which is apparently what people used to write things on.
Pause. How did you invent paper when the previous dynasty was the book burning dynasty? So what was the book made out of? And what is papyrus? Is that not just a font? Papyrus. Is papyrus paper not just paper? Papyrus. What's the difference between papyrus and paper? It's special. All right. It's parchment. All right, shout out papyrus.
During the Unification War, the rulers of the Yu state fled to the south in exile, where they set up their own kingdoms, the Nan Yu and the Min Yu, stretching all the way to modern Vietnam. The Han began a period of aggressive foreign policy under Emperor Wu, conquering both the Yu kingdoms in the south and going to war with the Xiongnu Confederation in the north.
Foreign policy back in the day was just who did you invade? There's not much policy. Just feels like how far did you get before it failed?
Annexing vast amounts of the ethnic Turkic Tarim Basin. This extremely rapid expansion into Central Asia gave China its first contacts with the numerous nomadic tribes of the inner steppes, attracting many merchants to the lucrative corridor between east and west.
Silk Road.
It was the beginning of the Silk Road. It was during the Han that China experienced its golden age. Great strides were made in developing art, culture, and science that would come to shape almost everything we know about Oriental culture today. A new religion making its way down the Silk Road began taking its own shape in the southwest. It is known to us as Buddhism.
Taoism.
In the year 9, the Han dynasty was briefly interrupted by a usurper named Wang Mang, who seized power from the Han in an attempt to establish his own dynasty. And he would have been successful were it not for his reforms to distribute land equally among the populace. He lost his territories in the west and was deposed by a mob after only 13 years of rule.
Yeah, there's no way that would work. There is no way that shit would work. He's trying to disperse that shit equally. People with all the land are getting all the fucking guards in the world to take that guy down.
I guess nobody told him it was way too early for China's communist revolution. The Han eventually defeated the Xiongnu after generations of fighting and expanded their trade with the West. They eventually split into 3 rival kingdoms in 222 and briefly reunited under the Jin dynasty in 280.
Shout out the
but
Jin
the
dynasty.
northern section rebelled against their rule by the so-called 5 barbarians, which the southerners called the 16 kingdoms. But both the south and the north were unstable and changed ruling families too many times to name. The Sui came to power as successors to the Zhao state and unified China again in 589, while the Gokturks rose to power in the central steppes. The Tang succeeded the Sui and expanded the empire. They subjugated the Gokturks in the north, conquered the Koreans in Goryeo, and solidified their iron hold in Southwest Asia.
What is subjugated? Because it sounds bad. Straight up. Enslaved. Okay. All right, I know that word. I got that word. Conquered. So he just wanted a different word than conquered. He used subjugated. I get you.
Tang China spread its influence over all the rest of Asia in China's second golden age. They were famous for introducing land reforms called the Fubing system, which is again a flirtatious experiment with communism. I can see where this is going.
What's the
The
Fubing
reforms
system?
were albeit successful, and the economic boom allowed for the budget of a standing army. If you're thinking to yourself that all this prosperity is too good to be true, then you'd be right.
Oh.
In 906, China collapsed again due to the power of regional warlords. The Song managed to control the southern part of China, but the north remained ruled by Chinese-influenced nomads. The Jurchens, a fringe...
Yeah, it feels like it unites, and then the warlords just eventually get a little too strong. So you got to get rid of the warlords. What happened to Siren Wu? We skipped right over her.
Tribe in modern-day Manchuria rebelled against their nomad rulers and soon conquered all the way down to northern China. They proclaimed the Jin dynasty and vied for power with the Song in the south. But as both kingdoms contended with each other, a new, powerful confederacy was brewing in the Mongolian steppes.
What's it called?
The Mongols were initially a squabbling band of nomadic herdsmen. They had distant links to the Xiongnu of the past and made their home on the Eurasian steppe. Their culture was deeply steeped in tradition and a religion that tied them to their land. But this was all to change with one man named Temujin, who history remembers as Genghis Khan, a man who would reform the Mongols from within and unite them into a powerful confederacy bound by blood and honor, and create a legal framework and exceptional social mobility.
It's in this exact moment that I am realizing Attila Hun and Genghis Khan were in very different timelines. I thought they were pretty close until now. I knew they were separate. I knew this. I'm not saying they were together, but I thought it was like 100 years. I thought it was like Attila Hun, boom, 100 years later, Genghis Khan comes around. I thought it was close. I didn't know it was fucking 1,000 years.
The Mongols under Genghis and his descendants founded the largest land empire in history and would have impacts on nearly every part of Asia and even Europe. The Mongols under Ogedai Khan would grow rapidly into a large organized empire. the land flourished in Mongol law, and they financed their state through large-scale raids. The Chinese of the Jin and the Song dynasty were no match for the rapid horse-based warfare of the Mongols, whose entire strategy was based on lightning warfare.
Just learning horse tech before everybody else. That's it. They just had the horse tech down. It was like learning how to R-Flash in 2012. You're just going to be the best person on the server.
By 1271, Kublai Khan was crowned Great Khan and Emperor of all China, beginning the Yuan dynasty. The Mongols brought with them their law, customs, and steppe traditions which blended with those of East Asia. Commerce and technology increased in the multi-ethnic empire, but it did not last very long. An inflation crisis due to the overissue of Mongol currency, as well as quite a few earthquakes, started to make the Chinese question whether heaven really wanted the Yuan Mongols to rule, and soon an all-out revolt ensued, with Huanzhang driving the Mongols back to Central Asia and crowning himself the first Ming emperor. The last two
Dude, that is a funny thing through Chinese history, is if Mother Nature acts up a little bit, you just jump on that shit.
Dynasties of China were the Ming and the Qing. Both presided over China's early modern period and shared similarities in policy. 1. Isolationism. Both dynasties pursued aggressive self-defense measures amid quite a lot of xenophobia. This manifested in the cutting of funding to the Navy to fund other projects such as the Great Wall.
It makes sense after you got taken over by a man named Genghis Khan and your entire country, which was the largest in the world, instantly was overrun. I get why they went isolationist. It's crazy. Genghis Khan rolled through Asia so bad they were in an isolation period for 500 years. That's some trauma. That's some crazy trauma.
2. Both had terrible mismanagement of money. Being unwilling to trade with foreign powers beyond the port of Canton led to an increased self-reliance.
瞎说嘛，这个不是还有一个郑和下西洋吗？
And decreased sphere of influence. 3. Both failed to recognize the threat of foreign powers in their waters, all of whom would play a direct role in collapsing the dynastical system by the turn of the century. China's unwillingness to modernize and trade with the West would lead indirectly to the Opium Wars and the Taiping Rebellion by parties like the British, French, and Japanese, who had a vested interest in opening up China to trade and Christianity.
It is kind of sad. It was like, hey, trade with us. And they're like, no, I don't want to. And it's like, nah, we want to sell you guys opium. It's just not a question.
闭关锁国嘛。
We will just kill you because we really want you to buy our opium. We'll kill you. We'll fucking kill you, all of you. That's crazy. And it worked. Trade or die was the trade deal. Yeah, and you know what? There's a winning option in that.
This in turn would spark the Boxer Rebellion as a counter-revolt against foreign influence in China. The Qing had dealt with none of these problems well enough, and soon revolts were more common than peace. Critiques view the failure of the Qing as the century of humiliation. In 1912, the Qing collapsed, and China fractured into numerous pieces of independent states called cliques, also known as the Warlord era. China
This
would...
is 1912? They had warlords in 1912. That's pretty recent. That's very recent. We had warlords in 1912. I mean, I guess it's not that crazy. Women couldn't vote in America.
Need to unify. And
1912 was a while ago. We were a bit behind then.
to do that, a Republican movement under Sun Yat-sen allied with the communists under the CCP,
Hold up.
also known as the Warlord era. China would need to unify, and to do that, a Republican movement under Sun Yat-sen allied with the communists under the CCP to fight the warlords on a united front. This went about as well as you would expect, with Kuomintang leader Chiang Kai-shek purging and executing communists en masse, breaking the fragile alliance. Soon, it was civil war, and the CCP were on the brink of annihilation. Were it not for a near-miraculous retreat of thousands of kilometers under Mao Zedong, called the Long March. This incredible journey helped recruit new members. But the war had to be put on hold in 1932, when the Imperial Japanese Army invaded the Manchurian cliques, and were now at the doorstep of China proper. With the threat of the Japanese, the two sides formed a united Second Front. The Japanese army invaded China in 1937 after a fabricated Chinese skirmish at the Marco Polo Bridge in Beijing.
What was that sentence?
It formed a united Second Front. The Japanese army invaded China in 1937 after a fabricated Chinese skirmish at the Marco Polo Bridge in Beijing. The war was tragic for the Chinese, with the second highest casualties of the entire Second World War. Millions of civilians and soldiers lost their lives for a state that did not technically exist. The ill-prepared and badly led Chinese armies were no match for the strict discipline of the Japanese Imperial Army, with many blunders during the invasion. At one point, the Republican Army even accidentally drowning 500,000 people while flooding the Yellow River.
What the fuck? I'm sorry.
蒋介石的昏招
How
嘛，
many people? 500,000? Chinese history is crazy because it's like Qing Dynasty, you know, warlord Li Zi fights Mongol emperor. 1.7 million people die. They've always had so many people. Their casualty numbers are insane. I don't think we had 500,000 people die in just the Civil War, right? Okay. I digress. I'm wrong on this. It's a little over 500,000, 620,000.
An attempt to halt the Japanese
around
advance. After a 3-month-long siege at Shanghai, the devastated Republican Army retreated to the capital at Nanking, which fell to the Japanese on the 13th of December.
An event you probably haven't heard about in the West known as the Rape of Nanking. The Japanese were so senselessly brutal to the Chinese that the Nazi ambassador was the voice of reason and is now celebrated as a hero in China. His letters and journals from the time tell of how up to 300,000 people were raped and murdered during the occupation. There were even contests to see which officers could behead 100 people with their swords in the fastest time. The results of which were printed in Japanese newspapers with the same tone that you would expect to see when reporting on a baseball game. Why has this event been mostly forgotten to history and in some cases flat out denied? When you're done here, head on over to my channel to find out.
Please.
Sounds good. I was like, you do sound different. Japan's war crimes were so bad that a Nazi had to step in and be like, guys, come on. Hey, seriously.
Be sure to check out Knowing Better's channel in the link below for more on how entrenched the events at Nanking became on the collective Chinese psyche. Japan's war was stunningly successful. However, they began losing a lot of ground by 1945, since they were now fighting a four-front war. The stunning successes of the Communist Army and the failures of the Republican...
Japan was fucked up. Japan was crazy fucked up. And Japan's rebrand is going insane. There's actually a really popular movie right now in China called 731, based off Unit 731, that like, it's like shock footage with how graphic it is. But it shows a lot of the shit. I wanted to watch it from like a educational background, but I don't think I could handle it, so I just buckled for a documentary instead. It's not out yet in the States. I think it's like in theaters in China right now. I thought this was common knowledge. I think common knowledge is not common everywhere you go, and what's common knowledge here isn't common knowledge elsewhere.
An army against the Japanese meant that the CCP was on much better footing in the minds of the people.
If you're in China, it's common knowledge. If you're in America, that you'd be talking to someone who's quite studied. You would be lucky if people were pointing to China on the map correctly. If you're in Japan, some might say it didn't happen. So I think it depends where you're at.